All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of The Copy Corner with your host, Terry Schilling.
And Dan Marzullo.
And today we have a special guest on the show. We have Elise LeMay, freelance content and copywriter and creator of the Internetly podcast, not Internetly newsletter. I apologize. But yeah, Elise, thank you so much for joining the show. We're happy to have you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, so we wanted to bring you on, and we're just going to jump right into it because you have been growing really fast on Twitter and promoting your freelance writing services, talking about your newsletter, a lot of people engaging with your content. So we thought we'd bring you on to just start to ask you, like, how do you successfully sell your writing services on Twitter? What's your process and the story there?
Okay. Yes. All right. Let's just dive right into it. So I knew I wasn't going to start with my life story, and I'm not going to do that. But I think it's important to provide some context as to how long I've been on Twitter and how I started there in the first place. Yeah. I have been on Twitter since June 2020 and had started posting consistently in October. So that's really not a long time. It's also worth noting that when I started, I didn't have a single client. I didn't even know the difference between copywriting and content writing. I was like a noob, like brand new, knew nothing, right? Yeah. And essentially, over the course of the past year and a half, I kind of figured out ways to grow on Twitter and engage. And as of today, I have just shy of 16,000 followers, which is cool. But more than anything, it's just like a vanity thing with the numbers, but it provides an insane vehicle for serendipity, for inbound leads, for work, for connecting with other freelancers. And really, having that Twitter account is the closest thing you have as a freelance writer as stepping into the office. Twitter changed my life completely. It is my favorite, my favorite social media. I have stock in it, like ride or die Twitter. And if I can help anyone change their life as a freelance writer through Twitter, by all means, let's get into it. Okay, so let's see how we can get into it. So essentially, when you begin as a freelance writer on Twitter, you don't need to have any expertise or even know what you're doing or have your first client. I think it's important that you figure out what your buckets are and what you want to tweet about. You don't have to know what those are right off the gate, but you can experiment and see what feels good and what doesn't feel good to tweet about. So in my case, my 3 buckets are freelance writing, obviously, writing in general, like how to write well, and then personal development / being a creator in the creator economy. So you can just tweet about those once a day. That's all I do. People always are like, what's your strategy? How'd you grow? And I'm like, I just tweet once a day. It's really underwhelming because people are like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's it. I'm like, no, it really is because, despite all the growth hacks and the DMing and the networking, it really just is consistency. Like that's your most powerful asset. So, yeah. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's inspiring to hear, right? Because everybody's like, oh, you got to post like 7 times a day on Twitter. And so for somebody who doesn't want to do that, like, oh, there's still hope for you.
Yeah, 100%. I actually wrote a guide called like the Lazy Girl's Guide to Twitter because I was like, you don't have to post like crazy or go on video chats or publish these mega threads twice a week to gain momentum. You really don't. It's all about just those tiny, tiny steps that build up over time. So I wrote a list of some of like my best practices for Twitter, and I'll just go through them one by one. And hopefully that just gives something compact for whoever is listening to walk away with this.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is first rule, do work for others. So this is super helpful if you are a brand new freelance writer with no experience. A lot of people ask, how do I get my first job? Like, how do I build up my portfolio? Find who you want to work for and do work for them without asking. So when I was starting off on Twitter, some of the big players on Twitter were people like David Perel and Jack Butcher. So I noticed that on YouTube, they had these podcast videos uploaded on there, and they were these super interesting conversations, but there wasn't any like written content for it. So one day I took it upon myself to create an article based off of this video that had been on YouTube. So I posted it then on Twitter, wrote some like copy on the tweet to make sure it kind of stood out a little bit more. And then from there, just kind of released it into the wild and was like, I'll just let it do its thing. But that tweet ended up getting a lot of engagements and retweets. But more importantly, it's how Jack Butcher noticed me, DM'd me, and then asked if I wanted to work on a project with him. So boom, that was like a byline that I would have never had otherwise. Yeah. So in your case, whoever's listening, just find someone that interests you, a project that you could potentially work on, and just do it. The fastest way to grow is to not be afraid to interact with these larger accounts and show them that you did work for them. So like, I'm a writer, I wrote an article, maybe you can do a YouTube video, you can write a podcast, like make it your own. So rule number 1, do work for others. 2, yeah. So the second way that I would recommend to grow is connect with other freelancers. So to me, Twitter is like a watering hole of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, creators, copywriters, business owners. I mean, there really is so many valuable people on there. And you don't have to use Twitter as a way where you're like always scouting for money and jobs, which you can. It's good for that. But more importantly, it's how you can connect with other freelancers, because sort of like the mantra of freelancing is don't pass on work, but pass on work. So people, when they don't get clients, I can't take credit for that. I think Brooklyn Nash on Twitter. I'm not going to take credit for that. He tweeted that. And I was like, damn, like I wish I wrote that. That's good copy.
Oh man, that's fun. We had Brooklyn on the show too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, was that a couple months ago, maybe?
Yeah.
Well, he knows what he's talking about, because that's what freelancers do. They want to present clients with a solution, right? So if a client is like, can you work on this for me? And they say, no, I can't, but here's someone that might be a good choice for you, because that's how they stay in good graces with that person. And you know the gist. So you should be that person for those freelancers. And you don't have to like go into their DMs and be like, please consider me as like a future choice. Just connect with them. Just be like, hey, I really like what you've been posting lately. Or retweet their things, like offer some valuable commentary, and just start to get to know people. And from there, like I've had freelancers pass on work to me just from Twitter, and I wasn't even asking if they had anything available. So
I think I love that. And like, I feel like Dan, you and I have touched on it a little bit before, but it's such like an element of like, you're coming off too much of just like, oh, I really want to work with this person. And you may hear advice of like, go ahead and reach out to the people you really want to work with. But like, I like your subtle approach of just engaging with them, retweeting, because Twitter is easy to give this quick engagement or like quote retweet and just comment and not ask right away if they need help with something, and the same can go for LinkedIn or on Instagram too. Just stay top of mind a little bit there, of course. But you don't have to go in right for the ask, and just give thoughtful engagement to them. And I think Twitter, has really become great for that. And I think the community of freelancers and marketers too is just, it's really, I just find it really welcoming.
100%.
And it really comes back to too, like me and Terry talk about all the time, freelancers aren't in competition with each other. A lot of them are afraid to go, oh, I don't want to connect with that person because they're going to steal work from me. And like you're saying, it's just another opportunity to, generate more business relationships that you're going to pass on opportunities that are better fits for other people than you. And so I like the way you put that for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and Dan too, like on top of that, like if you connect with somebody, you can give them a little bit more of like insight of what you do well. And then if maybe you don't have that time and you want to pass on like content writing to somebody, and then the next thing maybe 2 months they come back to you for website copywriting or landing pages because they're ready for that. But like again, like at least like you said, you're staying in the good graces. You're making that relationship. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, it's definitely way more efficient if you are just in it to genuinely connect with someone, because I've had a lot of DMs of people that are like, hey, help me. Do you have work? Give me work.
Give me work.
No, I swear some people come in so hot. And I mean, listen, like I want everyone to succeed. But when you come into my inbox or anybody's inbox with an immediate ask, it's not like going to go over well because they have a million other things to do. So just be there just to genuinely connect. And from there, you'll get so much more out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So rule number 2, connect with other freelancers, entrepreneurs. Love that.
Yes. So rule number 3, this is a baby one, but not to be dismissed, is to just use DMs. And specifically, if someone that you are like, I like their content, like I like their work, whatever, follows you, capitalize on that and use the momentum to send them a DM like immediately. Like obviously not within maybe like 5 seconds because that'd be creepy. But just like, I remember, who was it? I think Harry Dry from Marketing Examples followed me once. And I was like, wait, I really love this guy's work. So I just sent him a DM right away. And I wasn't like, give me work or give me something, obviously, but just being like, oh my gosh, hey, like stoked to see you follow me. Like, I really enjoy your stuff. And again, that falls back into rule number 2, which is just connect and see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think
Hey, I saw you followed me. Give me a project, please.
yeah,
Then
exactly.
unfollow.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Oh my gosh. Obviously, you know, we talk about LinkedIn a lot too. I know we're talking about Twitter, but LinkedIn is just notorious for like, oh, you know, it says that we should be friends or be connections. Like it does. Like, okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool,
Like
cool.
100%. Yeah, like they use the most vague similarities to be like, we should connect. So yeah, it's a bit of a dumpster fire on LinkedIn. Nothing compared to Twitter.
Yeah.
But okay, let's see. The next one I have here is when using threads. And I know I said to only tweet once a day. That's all you need to grow. But threads, I don't want to admit it, but it's true. And every time I've grown like a couple thousand followers in a few days has been with threads. It's
Okay.
either you can either hate the game or you can embrace it. And in this case, maybe you just want to embrace it. So in terms of threads that do really well, don't even have to be that complicated. They can be threads like, here are my top 10 favorite articles of all time. Here are the top 10 places that I find stats or interesting things for my articles. Here are my 10 favorite resources that helped me as a freelance writer. Like, it's stuff you already know. And if you just took a few minutes to think about it, you'd be like, oh yeah, I can think of 10 things that I like. But people love curation because it shows that you did the work for them.
Yeah.
So threads do well. And if you do threads, it's critical that you have a call to action at the bottom. It tends to help if your call to action remains the same on each different thread or whatever you're promoting. So in case I do a thread, I'll always just promote my newsletter at the end.
Yeah.
And if it does well, it does really well. I mean, there have been times where I gained like 50 subscribers in one day just from a thread that did well. So just make it consistent. If you do want to do threads, don't overthink it. It can just be a curation, resources. It's things that you know, and use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
Wow,
No,
great.
love that. I love that advice too. Just have any type of CTA, and I think it could be inspiring for people who may not have started a newsletter, or maybe like, what can I have? Like, you can simply create like a landing page and start collecting emails and creating content that way.
Yeah, super important. Super important. You even have to have a newsletter. You can just be like, if you like this thread, follow me for more threads like this on Twitter.
Yeah.
You know,
Retweet
like, don't
it.
overthink it.
Yeah. I've seen people do like retweet this first tweet. Like that's all they ask to do. And so that way more people can see it and then start following that person. I think that's a smart strategy as well.
Yeah, 100%. So it's good. Just embrace it. Use it to your advantage. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Yeah, that's how it goes. Okay, so I have the next one here, but I think I already mentioned at the beginning, which is just choose 3 buckets to tweet about. This is just something that is going to help you show up and not have an existential crisis about what to post. So if you have those three buckets, you have constraints. And as the saying goes, when you have constraints, they breed creativity. So if you sit there and you're like, I can only post about freelance writing, or creator economy, kind of narrows down your options. And from there, you'll find ideas. So have the 3 buckets, and you're not married to them. You don't have to sit there and like agonize over what your buckets are going to be. If I could change to puppies tomorrow, granted, I'd probably lose like a couple hundred followers. They'd be like, this is really random, but you're not married to anything, and you can really change your image at any time.
Yeah, no, that's great. And like, what I like about that of just like, it's simplifying things, but then you also just get more confident and consistent with it, where you can feel like you can shift things up and talk about something else that interests you as well. I think that's just such good advice. And like, it sounds simple, but I think it's harder to implement than some people realize. But just, I think like you mentioned in the beginning, consistency is the key.
Yeah, 100%. That's really the key to it, is you just have to choose like a small bucket of things that you want to be known for and tweet about. Because if you are all over the place, people aren't going to know what to associate you with. And then why would they follow you? And it's when you do gain a bit more followers that you can then expand. And like, for instance, like, again, if I were to tweet about like something random, like video games, people would be like, that's weird. But I wouldn't go from like 16K to like 500 overnight, but or maybe would I? Who knows? Anything is possible.
Yeah.
But
pretty hardcore audience there.
I know, right? Fucking cutthroat. So.
Right, they're done.
At least I'm curious, how and I know we talk about it's vanity metrics, but I am just curious, like how fast did you get to reach, over 16K followers with like just based on, your approach that you just laid out?
Like how fast did it take me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can't conceptualize this, but gosh, if I started tweeting in October 2020,
Okay.
so I hit 10K in November of 2021. So that took me about a year and 1 month to hit 10K. But to hit 15K took me, I believe, 57 days. So it's just the power of compounding. That's what it is. Yeah. So also, if you're starting off on Twitter, your first 1,000 followers is the hardest. And if you get that, then you should celebrate, have some champagne, do something, because it snowballs and it really does compound over time. So it's first 1,000 is the hardest.
Yeah.
But I like how you said too earlier, though. I mean, starting in 2020, that's really not that long ago. I think a lot of people, it's encouraging for people to go, oh, I didn't get on Twitter back in 06 or whenever it started. So, I'm going against the algorithm and I'll have no organic reach. And because, you hear a lot about that of platforms, get in early, build the following before it's too saturated. And so this is a great example of, you still have a shot at being a player on these platforms.
100%. I mean, I always like to say that unless you are dead in the ground, it is never too late to start whatever it is that you're interested in. So if you're interested in Twitter, go on Twitter. If it's TikTok, God, if it's even Facebook, it's questionable. But if you want to go on there, Yeah.
No, absolutely. At least with, you talked about your buckets and you talk about how you tweet once a day, and just being a writer yourself, writing content articles, the importance of a headline. So do you have any tips for writing that first line in a tweet, or even just a headline tip that you write for articles as well?
Yeah. So this reminds me of when, my boyfriend just started on Twitter, like brand new baby. And he was about to post his first tweet and he started it off like, he was like, I think you guys should check out blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, you cannot start it. He was like, no, you can't start it like that. Because really you have to, it's two things, right? One, drop the reader off in the middle. Don't build it up. Be like, I think you would really like this. No, your name is already on your profile. Just tell them. Like, don't build up to it. And then secondly, serve the reader. Always, always, always ask how you can serve the reader. If your tweet is only about you, it's not going to go anywhere. So drop them off in the middle of the action, serve your reader. And if you're ever anxious about posting something, I like to ask myself 3 questions before, which is 1, would I say this in real life? Like if I was at a dinner party and someone was like, gun to my head, read this tweet, would I read this tweet? Yes. And then the second question is, do I genuinely believe in it? Like, again, do I back this advice? Have I read articles? Do I feel good about it? If it's a yes, then cool. Then the third question is, do I think this could genuinely help just one person? If the answer is yes, then fuck it. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. And this goes into my last and 6th point, which is Twitter is one giant experiment. There are tweets that will do well, and there are tweets that will bomb. What matters is that you have fun with it regardless, and you don't take it personally. It's kind of like how scientists are. They try experiments. If an experiment flunks, they're not like, fuck this, like this is so mean to me. They're just like, well, that's how it is. And then they just try again. And that's how Twitter is too. So if you feel good about it, you believe in it, you would say it to someone in real life, it could help one person, tweet it, see how it is. It's just one big experiment.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, really great advice. Just, in general, just like how more specific you get, like would I read this out loud at a dinner party, even something it's just a good visual and just be like, yeah, I think this could start a good conversation with people.
Yeah, I mean, like, could you imagine, like, gun to your head dinner party, like, here are 10 hacks you need to know if you want to grow your audience. Like, it's a little questionable, but
or just like your example, it's like the dinner party. It's like, hey, everybody, I think you should read this right now. Like to your example. Sweet. But yeah, it's really interesting.
Hopefully that answers your question.
No, absolutely. That was really great advice. And we'll kind of wrap up on this too, because I want to bring attention to your newsletter, Internetly. Harness the power of the internet. You're growing that really fast, and I'm just curious. what was really the strategy when you started this? How did you come up with the idea? And ultimately, what's the goal right now with the newsletter?
Yeah, those are all stellar questions. So for a long time, I was overthinking the newsletter process. And what helped me unlock that mental block that I was facing was something that David Perel said, which is that as a creator, your newsletter is like a postcard, and it's something that you send to your fans wherever in the world they might be. And you're just like, hey, this is what I'm up to. This is what I found interesting. Here's a lesson that I learned that could help you. Peace. See you later. And knowing that it was just such a low pressure way to look at it, just a postcard updating you with what's going on, helped me be like, okay, this is actually not that big of a deal. When I first started Internetly, I didn't really know what I wanted it to look like. But the thing about your creations is that they have to be in motion for you to see their final form. So the best analogy I can give is when you're at a pottery class. I don't know who here has gone to a pottery class. Bear with me.
You go to pottery class fans here.
Big fans.
Yeah.
So if you go to a pottery class, they give you like a blob of clay, and you have to put it on the potter's wheel, and it has to be spinning for you to take your hands and shape it into the final form. Your ideas are the same way. So I put Internetly out there. I was like, this kind of looks like a blob. I don't really know what the fuck's going on with this, but I'm just going to keep putting it out there. And then in motion, I'll eventually refine it over time. And that's what happened. I deleted some sections, added some sections, switched from Substack to ConvertKit. And now today I'm like, okay, it's looking pretty good. But when I first published it, I was like, I don't know what the fuck this is. But it has to be in motion for you to be able to see the final vision. Because if you wait for something to be perfect, obviously it'll never, ever come out. As for what the goal is now, actually today we just got our first sponsor ever. So that's pretty cool.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, so that's a pretty decent, pretty big milestone. But then in the future, it's just a way to collect addresses, because in the future, if I want to sell a product or a digital course or whatever it may be, it's a good way to just have a connection with readers who actually kind of give a shit about what I'm up to. And it's a good platform to have with your audience. So
yeah. No, awesome. Very cool. Yeah. And again, and anybody listening, where can they find that newsletter?
Oh gosh. They can I can put a link in the chat.
I can put like a banner on here for people watching live as well. Yeah.
Let's see.
We'll put it in the show notes too.
Okay, sweet. It's literally just eliselemay.com/newsletter. I believe.
Newsletter. All right. Yeah. Go check that out and subscribe, to Internetly. Really, really great. And just love how you kind of explain that, that creative process of coming up with it. I think, Dan and I can definitely relate. Just and like Dan talked about on our last podcast, you switching over and starting, your new, kind of your new venture from the content writing standpoint. And that stuff is important. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Elise, that's all we got. Dan, you any other questions?
I think that was it. I think we covered it, Terry.
Yeah, this was really good. Again, really succinct. Touched on a lot of great stuff. This was really great, Elise. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing some insights to promoting and just growing a engaging, friendly, if you will, following on Twitter. This is really good stuff.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. Like I say, it's just a game. Have fun with it. Don't overthink it. It's meant to it's all a game, So might as well play along.
Yeah. And before we go, we just promoted the newsletter, but now really the floor is yours to promote and where everybody else can find you and where you hang out on the internet.
Right. So it literally probably goes without saying that you can just find me on Twitter.
Right.
Obviously. So my Twitter is just, you know what? I don't even know what it is. I think it's just twitter.com/Elise LL So there's that.
Okay.
Yes. So there's that. And then you can subscribe to my newsletter Internetly if you want to reach me. DMs are a little crazy right now, but email is a much better way in case you have any questions on audience building, content writing, copywriting, building, selling, whatever. I'm here to help as many people as I can. So best way to reach me.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Yeah, Elise, thanks again so much. And everybody, thank you so much for listening to the show today. We hope you enjoyed it. And go connect with Elise. You guys subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. You guys can find us just by searching Dan Marzullo and Terry Schilling. And then wherever you listen to podcasts, check out the Copy Corner. We appreciate all the support. And Elise, thanks again.
Yeah,
thanks
thanks
so
so much,
much.
guys. Appreciate
All right,
it. Bye.
ending the broadcast.